Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Puji syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, pada hari ini kita bisa hadir bersama dalam webinar yang diselenggarakan oleh Goesmart 2022 dari Task Force 2 Smart City and Community Innovation Center Bandung Institute of Technology. I see some participants from foreigner, so I better switch to English. Yeah. Thank you for joining the session. This session is held with the focus on the discussion on the accessibility and affordable universal internet access to rebuild and recover in the pandemic era. We will hear some thoughtful insight from our internal region, government, and also from external speakers sharing the thoughts and the advancement of these issues in several countries. Without further ado, please welcome Professor Suhono, who will deliver his opening speech for this session. Prof. Suhono, the time and screen is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Rizal. His Excellency Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, His Excellency Ministry Communication and Informatics with its representation, distinguished co-chair of T20 Task Force 2, Professor Glenn Warrock from Berkeley University, and also the author from Policy Area 1, Scott, and also speaker from Indonesia, Mr. Diki, Mr. Dani Junior, and also all participants. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. I don't know, in the United States, in good evening, in the night. Yeah. Well, I would like to thank for all the participation, both from government, from university, and from industry and community. Well, I would like to introduce again about the T20. The T20 or T20 is the G20's official engagement group that is responsible for connecting and collaborating with regional and international think tanks. There are about 150 or 200 researchers involved in think tank 20. Is selected from 800 papers that we select about 100 and some marker papers. And it serves as the G20 Ideas Bank, bringing together experts from the most relevant think tank and research center worldwide to provide, facilitate, and communicate research-based policy recommendation to the G20. The T20 Indonesia strive for a future of prosperity, sustainability, and inclusion in order to better engage the research community, policymakers, and the public at large in the context of the Indonesia presidency. The following are the role of T20 in G20. The first, provide analytical input into the G20 decision-making process. Second, to provide independent recommendations which are based on empirical evidence. Third, to promote international cooperation by providing honest and foresight discussion among think tanks and researchers. Four, to initiate policy dialogue on the issue that have yet been covered in the formal forum. There are 9 task forces scoping in T20, from trade, digitalization, food security, infrastructure, till payment system. Smart City and Community Innovation Center as a University Center of Excellence is appointed as a host institution for Task Force 2 with focusing in meaningful digitalization, cybersecurity, and empowerment. Digitalization is a catalyst on G20 2012 pillar, whereas Indonesia is a president for G20 in this year. There are 9 policy areas are considered in this task force. That is, first, accessible and affordable universal internet access to rebuild and recover in the pandemic. So meaningful broadband is the including in the first policy area. The second policy area is smartization and meaningful digitalization for sustainable development goal, also including the second of the policy area. The number 3, data governance, include data protection and cross-border data flow. Digital government and smart city and smart village. AI governance and ethics. Digital literacy and skill for closing digital gender gap. Small medium enterprise startup digital payment and technology adoption. Number 8, cybersecurity, race, threat, and data privacy. And the number 9, I also as a focal point in this point, impact and potential of digital development cooperation. Today even discuss related policy area 1 with the entitled Meaningful Broadband for Blue and Green Economy. There are 3 pillars that consider in a presidency Indonesia: economic recovery, climate change, and health. So meaningful broadband is a catalyst, is a digitalization, is an enabler or transformer. If you know, digital is not only technology as a tool, but also as an enabler, but moreover as a transformer. In this event, we invite 2 ministers related with the broadband economy and broadband for blue economy and green economy. There are some of the relationship: blue economy, green economy. Blue economy is usually considered in the sea, in the maritime. So with a very related, we invite the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Advisory, and also Ministry of Information Communication is a core of the digitalization in infrastructure. And also we invite 2 related with policy area 1 is Professor Glenn as the focal point of the policy area 1 in the Task Force 2, and the author, Mr. Scott from Bruegel. It's interesting researcher for discuss about the meaningful broadband, meaningful accessibility, and also we invite from the local government in Indonesia from Jawa Barat. Jawa Barat is open and also have a G20 program. So T20 is related with the Jawa Barat, West Java, to as a case study in the digitalization in some sector. For example, in marine or in maritime or in rural digital transformation, and also in urban or campus digital transformation. So Jawa Barat is one of the our institute collaboration for the use case in the policy brief development. And also for your information, beside the policy brief production, we also organize 2 side events. There are G20 Smarter World Living Lab as a knowledge production and to produce the policy brief with the real condition, as I mentioned before, in maritime, in rural, in urban, in campus. This is one of these very interesting, and now is preparing for the launching, and we invite all parties in the world, G20 member or in related, to set up Smarter World Living Lab as our production. The second, also we organize G20 Smarter World Ideation Challenge for the youth, for the innovator, to give what is the creativity to solve the problem in environment, in traffic, in the health, and so on and so on. So they can improve with the startup or to solve the real world in our society. So we invite for all participants to join in the partnership for this, and hope we could discuss this issue and will result quality policy-based brief on supporting G20 challenge. Thank for all parties in the contribution. With best regard, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Suhono, for the very broad explanation on the T20 program under Indonesia this year G20 presidency. Thank you very much. This will open up our understanding of this T20 program. Consists of 9 focus area explained by Prof. Suhono. And then, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we continue with the session of the keynote speech from Bapak Insinyur Sakti Wahyu Tronggono, Menteri Kelautan dan Perikanan Republik Indonesia, that has been recorded for this session. Please, we can start the video recording.
Greetings to one and all, ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my great honor and pleasure to join this Goesmart 2022 Meaningfull Broadband for Blue Economy. We value blue economy as one of my reverence to make our ocean sustainability and for the sake of greatest prosperity of the people. 3 main pillars of blue economy have been developed as a strategy to pursue those commitment and agenda. Those are ecological health, economic growth, and social inclusion. Those main pillars provide a legitimate basis for safeguarding the health and resilience of the ocean, attracting investment and providing jobs. The transformation of Indonesia's fisheries will take off this year, 2022. With a better regulated and sustainable fisheries. This means that we will have healthy ocean, economic growth, and equal distribution across the nation. Blue economy guide and support market-based mechanism, where fisheries products should be sourced from sustainable practices instead. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, three main programs have been introduced, namely quota-based fishing policy, export aquaculture-oriented, and aquaculture for community development. Alongside with the fisheries policy transformation, Indonesia is currently applying a comprehensive marine spatial planning. Using MSP, we would like to align and manage multiple stakeholder and sector interests that can be very divergent in environment, social, and economic perspective. All activity must comply with marine space allocation, carrying capacity, and impact mitigation. This means that marine spatial planning serve as supreme reference for economic development and environment conservation interests. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, until now, in our ministry, several platforms have been able to meet digitalization needs in the marine and fisheries sector. To support the three main programs, our ministry is also preparing an integrated satellite-based technology system, which will be used as the main fishing operation surveillance system and providing accurate data on the various needs of anglers at sea. This innovation solution can be used for sensing, understanding, and acting, not only for surveillance. Digital transformation is one of the change management strategies to align people, process, and technology as enabler in the organization to align with the mission, vision, and strategy. At this very important occasion, we appreciate the plan for developing a living lab as a process initiated by Smart City and Community Innovation Center Bandung Institute of Technology. I hope collective action and knowledge in digital transformation are critical to strengthen global effort that will enable us to measure the progress of the sustainable development of our oceans. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry for the audio problem of the video. We see that the video is very interesting, but we have to guess what is the video trying to tell us about. It's basically telling about the enrichment of Indonesian oceans, and it's very consistent with Pak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono has told us during his keynote opening that there is a digital transformation regarding how Indonesia manage the maritime, the ocean. We know that Indonesia consists of 17,000 of islands. If you like to travel around Indonesia, just like I do, then you will find that it is indeed very beautiful. And behind this beautiful scanning of Indonesian islands, there is a very huge potential of economy that is emphasized by Pak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono during his keynote speech, that the digitization is indeed in the high priority of Departemen Kelautan, Kementerian Kelautan dan Perikanan Republik Indonesia. So we have a very big opportunity to share our knowledge and our contribution, as also mentioned by Prof. Suhono during his opening, that your contribution on this T20 focus areas is very much welcome. I'm checking whether Pak Semi already joined us. Pak Semi will deliver the keynote speech, the second keynote speech, on behalf of His Excellency Pak Johnny Gerard Plate, that could not join us. I'm just checking whether Pak Semi has joined us by now. Not yet, yeah. Okay, we still have time to move forward to the next, the first session, but I think we can fill the session with maybe from the audience. If you have any thoughts or question regarding the opening speech of Prof. Suhono and the keynote speech of Pak Sakti Wahyu Trenggono, you can write on the chat, and we can discuss that with Prof. Suhono and with all of the our speakers. I think we will continue with the session, but once Pak Semi joining us, we will come back and share, give the opportunity to Pak Semi to share the keynote speech. Yeah, there's another option. We will Riza, can we try again the video? The video is very beautiful, yet we haven't got the audio. If you can retry the video, I think it's also a good idea, while we're also waiting for Pak Semi.
Okay, Pak Rizal, I will try the video again.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, unfortunately, we still have problem with audio. I have that message from
The ocean has provided food for my family. From my great-grandfather to my children.
Since a long time ago, the ocean has made a significant contribution to the wheels of the economy all over the world. The ocean provides food and employment, which can lead to the prosperity of all nations. As populations grew, so did the pressure towards the ocean. But the ocean never complained. We know the ocean is in danger, but sometimes we are blinded by our greed. It is the time to start reducing the pressure to the sea through eco-friendly innovations.
Now, the shrimp cultivation supports my family. Sends my child to school and helps me cover medical expenses.
Let's explore the ocean's potential in more sustainable ways. Will we always rely on capture fisheries? Since the ocean has been polluted and overexploited, innovations must be created. Will we be able to create innovations to fulfill our needs?
Thank you, Riza. Finally, we could see the video properly, yeah, even though it is just after several minutes we hear the audio, but it's okay. We can see it from the video, the very beautiful Indonesian ocean, and also the economic potential could leverage from this ocean. We can see how we make how we cultivate shrimp and so on. It is very, very interesting. Unfortunately, we haven't seen Bapak Samuel Abrijani Pangerapan, who is in plan on joining us. But nevertheless, we can continue to the next session. We can please, I welcome Bapak Firman Nurtafian, Kepala Bidang Pemberdayaan Usaha Ekonomi Masyarakat, to share your program, your thoughts, and also actions that has been taken from Jawa Barat government, as also mentioned by Prof. Sohono during his opening speech. Without further ado, Pak Firman, the screen and time is yours.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay. The screen is okay?
Yes, the screen is clear, but we can please show the mode show the presentation, Pak Firman. Will be better. Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Firman Nurtafiana, represent the Community and Village Empowerment of West Java services. My head of office, Mr. Diki, now has had an activity with the governor. Let me some present, but policy support to ensure the sustainable digitalization for rural ecosystem, and we talk about our priority program in West Java, and we know the name is Digital Village. The outline is three area, but West Java rural area condition, Digital Village, and collaborate with us. West Java have 49 million people, 20% of entire Indonesian population, and 70% people live in the village. We have 18 regencies, 9 cities, 627 districts, more than 5,000 villages, and more 600 sub-districts. West Java, as we know, is the largest province in Indonesia and most rapid population growth for age. And talk about village in West Java, poverty in rural areas is more than 10%, and is urban area about 7%. 70% people work in informal sector, then 48 work in agriculture sector, 16% is a factory worker. GDP from rural areas in West Java, maybe Indonesia, about 14%. And we have 5,021 badan usaha milik desa, as we know, BUMDes, or village-owned enterprise. West Java Developing Index, first we have now 586 independent villages, 2,102 developed villages, 2,606 developing villages, and only 18 underdeveloped villages. Infrastructure availability, we have about 600 spot atau blank spot village in West Java. Then we have active BUMDes 4,223 that is assisted by Tokopedia 35 BUMDes, 1,335 BUMDes assisted by Shopee Center, 40% registered on the rural platform. Main commodities, the priority is 72% is agriculture, and then industry manufacture, trade and retail, mining inquiry, delivery warehouse communication, services, and other. We have a 20 priority program for village improvement. As we know, Gerakan Membangun Desa, or village development movement. Their activity is BUMDes Champion, One Village, One Company, Posyandu Champion. Posyandu, as we know, similar that health services, small group in health services in citizen. Village Academy Champion, Advocacy Champions, Digital Village, Patriot Village, CEO BUMDesa, Tourism Village, Sapa Warga, Multifunction Car for Village, and then rural infrastructure. 12 priority program is the aim is to achieve the governance key indicator, increase of independent village and remove the underdeveloped village. And now about this desa digital village. West Java digital information is about 3 activity: control, observe, and connect. 6 main activity in West Java Digital Province: innovation, government, society, education, digital inclusive, and collaboration. Digital inclusive divided in digital village and digital citizenship. It's about government mind map about desa digital. And this benefit of digital village in West Java, we have 4 benefits. First is village database or big data is the purpose of village development planning, implementation, and evaluation. Second one is accountability of village government for the purposes for acceleration and easier service, then transparency of finance and activity. Third, develop village potential, about mapping village potential and utilization village potential. And the fourth is develop village business and activity. We talk about digital communication, optimize of business platform, e-commerce, online payment, etc. Internet of things utilization for people activity. Governor says that the Desa Digital program isn't only about free Wi-Fi hotspots. It's about changing the way people trade, communicate, make potential, and promote tourism through a digital ecosystem. We have 4 stages about develop Desa Digital in Jawa Barat. 1.0 is smart infrastructure, providing internet connection in the village. 2.0 smart society, assisting the villager in using internet to communicate and access information. 3.0 smart economy, inviting business actor and BUMDes to join a training program related to a digital marketplace. 4.0 is about smart environment, increasing productivity of the villagers independently and sustainability. Example for Desa Digital 1.0, we have 624 blank spot village. Our partner is Bakti, Lintas Arta, etc. Progress activity, visa, we have built 141 kawasan desa digital area, etc. This is a launching of Desa Digital in 2021. Kawasan Desa Digital, and then progress Desa Digital 2.0, digital literasi webinar, and then about e-commerce, we several BUMDes activities use social media for marketing business product with Shopee, Universitas Twente, Indomobil Group, and Tokopedia. We also have a rural platform, as we call the activity now, Pahlawan Desa. Is meeting media of broker, and then connected with the third parties platform for e-commerce. We have next activity is Chandra di Muka Jabar Coding Camp, and then is Desa Digital 4.0 Fishery Digital Village. We have activity about 200 smart auto feeder, increasing productivity 30 to 100% in Subang, Indramayu, and Cirebon. Also, agriculture village in the commodities bell pepper, red onion, etc. Healthcare digital village, multimedia digital village, and village digital financial system collaborate with Bank BJB. And several villages in West Java have activity but smart village. For example, in Cangkingan, Indramayu, they have a fitur layanan mandiri services, independent services by people about daily activity, kartu tanda penduduk, etc. Then, how we accelerate the digitalization in rural area? First, it must be acceleration of internet connection. Second one, enhancement digitalization of village government service. Third, develop and utilization of village potential. And four, we have a program, the name Talesa, Pusat Digital Economy Desa, about village digital economy center. And the last one, collaborate with us, West Java Province Digital Village. This is West Java Pentahelix, academics, community, government, media, and business. This is the partner of digital village in West Java. Now it is localization criteria about Desa Digital 1.0. We have the existence of Badan Kerjasama Antar Desa, village having a website, committed to develop the village through the technology, committed to develop the business entity, preparing a Pandu Desa community group as technical implementer of information technology, willing to allocate the APBDes or village budget for the development of BUMDes, supported by ICT activities, made BUMDes as operator and administration to regulate internet distribution to the villagers. Beneficiary criteria for Desa Digital 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0. Desa Digital 2.0 or digital literacy village are registered as the beneficiaries on Desa Digital 1.0. Has an internet network, village government actively support digital literacy improvement program for society, registered as a recipient of financial assistance for the Sapa Warga program. Village government is ready to become a facilitator for these activities. Has ICT activities, Pandu Desa, Village Assistant, or Patriot Desa we have to assist in socialization, monitoring, and program evaluation. This Digital 3.0, we have has an active BUMDes, has an internet network, village government support, micro, small, and medium enterprise development, has a superior product. Village government is ready to become a facilitator for digital activities. And 6, has a ICT activities. Desa Digital 4.0 has this is IoT innovation and technology activity in here, has a farmer or fisherman group, has an internet network, has local champion to ensure local empowerment and assist the process of monitoring, evaluating, and assessing impact regularly. Village government support to the improvement of agriculture through digital technology innovation. Village government is ready to become a facilitator for these digital activities. And 6 has ICT activities. That's all. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Pak Firman. Very interesting how West Java is on the big leap program and roadmap to be digital province with the digital village actions that covering fishery, agriculture, healthcare, multimedia, financial, very interesting. And also Pak Firman explained that very interesting also this one of 33 province has 49 million population. It's also 20% of Indonesian population. Thank you very much, Pak Firman. We shall continue with our next session. Please welcome Pak Dani Januar Ismawan, Direktur Layanan Masyarakat dan Pemerintahan dari Badan Aksesibilitas Telekomunikasi dan Informasi. Pak Dani Januar Ismawan, the time and screen is yours.
Thank you, Pak Rizal. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And maybe someone can help to show the presentation. Or I have to, okay. Thank you very much. Next slide. First of all, I would like to introduce you shortly about the Bhakti organization. So Bhakti is the Universal Service Obligation Agency in telecommunication sector under the Ministry of Communication and Informatics. So you know, Indonesia, as one of the largest archipelagic countries in the world, has many challenges to provide equitable infrastructure and infrastructure development, especially in treaty. We have our own terms. Treaty is called terdepan, terluar, and tertinggal. All it means the borderland area, outermost island, and also the disadvantaged region in Indonesia. So through the affirmative policy, the government of Indonesia is present to develop the telecommunication and information infrastructure to support the digital economy development. Next slide, please. Okay, as we see today, the digital divide is still become the biggest challenge for us. There are more than 12,000 villages in Indonesia not being covered by the 4G cellular services, and also more than 150,000 public facility such as school, health center, village office still have no internet connection. So the President Jokowi already give the mandates on how to accelerate the digital transformation. And to achieve the vision, we intend to accelerate the development of digital infrastructure through this program. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, as we see here, there's many initiatives, mostly in the infrastructure sector. Yeah, this is we call the first program is Palaparing. We already finished this program in 2019. We developed the backbone network project that connects 90 agencies using fiber optics and microwave radio connection. And the next is the BTS 4G, the best services for the cellular telecommunication. So we have a target in the next, maybe the end of this year, we have to finish to provide the 4G cellular in the 7,900 villages. And also today we already provide the free internet access. It's already served about 11,500 public facility throughout the Indonesia. And beside the infrastructure, we also give the digital ecosystem to increasing community productivity through empowerment and assistance in utilizing the telecommunication infrastructure, especially in the remote areas. And the last program, the infrastructure program, we have the multi-function satellite, we call it Satria, Satellite Republic Indonesia. And this satellite will serve 150,000 public facility big throughput satellite, and it will be operate or it will be launched in the end of the years 2023. So the digital access has become a major need, not only in the big cities, but also in the rural areas. Now, as we live in the era of digital transformation, digital access means information at your fingertips and to strengthen our closeness with technology. And to put it simply, the importance of digital access line and its ability to enable societies to forge a better future. And we believe the quality and access to telecommunication and internet services is also the fundamental human right. And Indonesia has made a tremendous step forward in digitalizing the nation. And Bakti Kominfo has been is part of accelerating the country's digital infrastructure. Next slide. Okay, after the infrastructure, we also want to continue about what is really Bakti do for the digital ecosystem. The Indonesian government has created a map that brings together 10 priority sectors of Indonesian digital transformation. This become a primary blueprint for supporting a national digital ecosystem. The 10 priority sectors center around digitalizing business, citizen, and the government, which include sectors such as digital financial services, education, and also digital literacy, digital trade, as well as also digital health. We understand the opportunities that can be explored within the region, and in our efforts to push through the digital transformation by producing 20 digital ecosystem initiative. Next slide. Yes, as we can see in this slide, our activities also have extended to 44 programs that foster the inclusivity of digitalization, where we hope we can close the digital gap to secure a brighter and more connected future for Indonesia. As you can see, we have carefully measured and planned our initiative that empower communities, especially in the 3T areas, yeah, the 3T, whether it might be educating or training small and micro businesses to embrace the digitalization, or pushing through innovation in digital health. And our diverse program seeks to elevate people through digitalization and technology. And we also believe that how we use technology And the internet will be influenced through the education. And with that reason, Bhakti places great investment and effort in development digital human capital, such as through training session, like coding, telecommunication skill, computer science, as well as also the English lesson. But okay, next slide, please. Sorry. Okay. So Bhakti also has played an important role as an orchestrator by collaborating with various stakeholders. The collaborative and inclusive nature of Bhakti's digital ecosystem initiative that rely on working closely with strategic partners, government, ministries, and local government also warrant the sustainability of Bhakti's program. Today, we have worked with over 16 government agencies and also major telco operators and over 30 startups and technology companies that support our mission in building a digital ecosystem for rural communities. And the last slide, please. Okay, finally, we hope that you will collaborate with us as strategic partners. And we believe that the mutual partnership will create meaningful impacts and bring smiles for millions of community in rural and remote areas. Our work is driven by our motto, make things happen meaningfully. And we are excited to welcome you all on a journey to build a resilient digital ecosystem. So thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Pak Dhani Januar Ismawan from Bhakti Badan Aksesibilitas Telemedicine Informasi Kementerian Kominfo. Very interesting. Pak Dhani has shared with us that Bhakti has many various technologies regarding with the mobile communication, satellite, Wi-Fi, microwave system, fiber submarine cable, and also from the business initiative related with the business support, community support, government support, and also human capital development. And also Pak Dhani invite us all to join a Bhakti initiative. So please, any from the attendee, if you like to follow up this information, please contact Pak Dhani Januar Ismawan. And thank you very much for sharing, Pak Dhani Januar Ismawan. And we continue to our next speaker, our distinguished speaker, Professor Glenn A. Waras from University of California, Berkeley, will share his thoughts and his these topics area. Prof. Waras, please, the time and screen is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Reisel. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very clear, Prof.
Okay, now the next step is for me to share my screen. And let me see how I can do that. I don't suppose you can see it now.
Yes, we can see the deck by now. Okay, thank you.
How's that? Good. Okay. Not as colorful as the previous two presenters, but hopefully I'll have the same amount of information in this. Thank you, Professor Suhono, Dr. Reisel, the distinguished panelists, and it's a pleasure to be here today and to talk about policy area number 1 out of 9, which is the the work of Task Force 2 of T20. I'm going to make the argument that that is the most important and foundational of the policy areas because the others depend on it. The previous two presentations, I think, made clear that the infrastructure needs to be there before all the digital innovations can be placed on top of them. So it's important, as I think Mr. Vanny had just made the point, is to ensure universal service. Well, let me start with something that I believe everybody in this audience is familiar with, but it's helpful, I think, to fix ideas. Digitalization is just relentless. It's ongoing, it's unstoppable. The trend towards online working, learning, commerce, healthcare, government, it just continues to grow. Quite independent of the pandemic, but the pandemic has just surged that growth exponentially. The network has stood up to the test of the pandemic as we moved from offline to online, but the digital divide remains. There's still unconnected segments of the population. I forget the figures from the last presentation, but I believe that there were quite a number in both West Java and also recorded by Bhakti. Now, however, the consequence of digital gap is more extreme because those in-person alternatives just are not there. So I'm stating the obvious here, digital inclusion is essential. So the part of my title here and my marching orders was to look at the closing of the digital gap. And so it's good to decide what it is the digital gap. Well, there's a lot of gaps. And I just list some that have been mentioned elsewhere: the coverage gap, adoption gap, upgrade gap, and that would be the gap in moving from 4G to 5G. Happening right now. Digital skills gap, the usage gap. I'm going to focus on the connectivity gap and that basic need to have a connection, wireline or wireless, to the internet. Right. By and large, we call that the digital divide. And it seems that it has been sliced into three different segments of the population that are falling on the wrong side of that digital divide. And there's first is the unserved. That is that they have no broadband available at their home or work. We're going to see in a second that that may happen for fixed, but not often for wireless. But if the smartphone is not smart enough and the data plan is not big enough, not a close substitute. There's also the underserved group, which has access to broadband, but it's of insufficient quality to meet the needs of the individual. Then there's the non-adopters, where they have service available, but they don't purchase. And the usual reasons for not purchasing are it's not useful enough, but often as well it's too costly. And I'm going to focus in on that affordability issue in a minute. Just to remind you that there's still this gap in connectivity. This is taken from the ITU in 2020. These are the different regions of the world with number of people connected per 100 population. So you have to look at this as numbers are subtracted away from 100. So there's of course, it's as you would expect, higher income, higher connectivity. It's the case that there's greater mobile penetration, both cellular mobile and broadband mobile, than fixed. But in the end, it confirms that there's still a need to get more and more people. So what's been done to close the gap? I would identify two main policy strategies that I have seen in the US and developing countries, and I think really worldwide. And they divide into, first, to subsidize broadband deployment where that infrastructure does not exist. The other is to encourage broadband adoption where it's low. So subsidize deployment, encourage adoption. Now, more recently, the emphasis, I believe, in terms of policymakers has been moving towards affordability and equity. In part, that's because the infrastructure has been widely deployed, not universally, but widely. And therefore, turning to other impediments to the universal service, such as affordability. There's a couple of ways of implementing strategies. Government intervention, of course, is one, and I'm going to talk about that mainly here. But there's where the government puts the bill to subsidize providers and consumers, and I think that's what Bhakti does. But also to make public investments, say Wi-Fi hotspots and municipal wireless networks. There's also market approaches, and promoting competition is one that's favored among economists. But also a favorite is just removing regulatory barriers, sharing infrastructure and access to space, rights of way, and so forth. The question I want to pose and hopefully answer in part in this policy area is, which policies work? What is it about the successful policy or policies? And I list here just, different ways of approaching those two strategies I had on the previous slide. One with being broadband deployment. You can do beauty contests of different projects, and that's very popular. Less popular, but having very good properties is the reverse auctions, where private companies will bid to procure the infrastructure that is requested by the government. So there are a handful of different broadband deployment policies. There's also affordable broadband programs, again, trying to get consumers incentivized to adopt. Discounts, vouchers, low-cost offerings, free public access. These are all different ways of working on the demand side. Effectively, I've divided this in supply side and demand side, as an economist will do. But they also can work together, or possibly. So we're going to see an example in a minute where provider subsidies to deploy broadband was contingent on offering an affordable consumer broadband plan. So working both sides of the market, both supply and demand. That can be quite effective to synergize both sides of the market. So this is the main point of this presentation is that the world is really a policy laboratory for us. And right now there's experiments being conducted all over the world. And some of them were conducted before the pandemic. Many, many more have been introduced during the pandemic as a response. Some may even reach our ideal of a randomized controlled trial, or at least get close to it. The point is that they're generating a wealth of information and evidence that we can tap into and to use in our set of recommendations that are going to be put to the G20. There's much that we can learn from this. Of course, national markets are different. Regulatory institutions vary from one country to the next. And we have to take that into account. Which ones will transfer to a different setting? Countries differ in size, and therefore some policies may not scale very well if you move from a small country to a large country, or vice versa. You have to keep that in mind, but the idea is the same, that we've got a lot of evidence that is being generated. I thought this was worth pointing out that that the ITU had also identified, as of mid-19, 164 countries had broadband plans in place. These are just plans. They're not necessarily equivalent to Bhakti and a universal service program, but they had plans, some of which would be implemented. Most of these, as you can see in the pie chart in the right, are to connect to, are the first of the two strategies that I highlighted: build broadband infrastructure and connect households. A smaller amount is to promote adoption of broadband services side of the market. So this is, I thought I would just mention an illustration of what's going on in the US, since I know it the best. It may not travel very well as for the reasons I just gave, but I think some of the lessons are the same regardless of the country. We have many legacy programs, especially run by the FCC, but also many other agencies. The pandemic has created an unprecedented number of programs funded by an unprecedented number of dollars. These have created opportunities and challenges. There's many programs, some of them running simultaneously, and it'll be more difficult as a result to tease out the effect of any individual program. Similarly, our 50 states and the District of Columbia runs their own, often will run their own program in parallel, sometimes supplementing federal programs. And they start at different dates, and we'll see that in a second. Here are the main federal universal service programs. It's usually thought of as the FCC as being the source, but there's many others that are large agencies that are involved. This is just a quick snapshot of the FCC's universal service program. This is about $8.5 billion per year. It's divided into 4 buckets: high cost, low income, schools and libraries, and rural health care. Fairly typical buckets for a universal service program. And this has been running since for the last, well, it depends, but roughly 15 to 20 years. Much had changed with the pandemic, though. In this slide and the next, I just mentioned the 4 big laws that were passed that had impact on broadband, what you'll see is the number of programs and the dollar amounts just seem to grow over time as the laws are passed. I want to focus on the most recent one and the largest one, and that is the Infrastructure Act. It was passed in November 21. And it had a number of different programs, basically totaling up to about $65 billion over a 5-year period. And I want to look at these, the first two here, the Affordable Connectivity Fund and the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or BEAD program. So the FCC's efforts at making broadband affordable goes back to about 2012 when it extended its Lifeline, or 2016 when it extended its Lifeline program to broadband access. It's not a large amount, $9.25 a month, but it garnered about 6.5 million participants. Part of that is due to some states, like the state that I'm in, California, supplementing it by more than doubling that amount. During the pandemic, the Emergency Broadband Benefits Program ran, at least for most of 2021. That bumped up the amount considerably to $50 per month. Included also money to underwrite connected devices. Much greater response of 9 million. But the infrastructure bill put in place the Affordable Connectivity Program, which began in January 1st of this year, cut back on the dollar amount, and still has become very popular with over 10 million as of last week. So the point of going through this is just to show that there's variations in these programs, certainly in terms of the monthly subsidy, and also in terms of some of the details that I didn't mention, like coverage of connected devices and eligibility requirements, that give us the opportunity to look back on the data and see which ones are most effective and most successful. Quickly, the NTIA's BEAD program, I shouldn't be quick here because this is the largest amount ever devoted to broadband, I think, in the world, certainly in the United States. $4.5 billion will be dispersed by the Department of Commerce's National Telecommunications and Information Agency. But it will delegate to the states and their subgrantees by passing out the money to the states, okay, for last mile infrastructure for underserved areas. The idea here, though, is that this is going to generate a lot of experimentation, a lot of different variations, because each state is going to go its own way. And it's whether it's politics, culture, history, or some other historical fact that states are going to devise their own plans. From a standpoint of a policy analyst, this has its benefits. It has its benefits in that they explore different levers in which to close the digital divide. They're going to delegate to the states, but the states are then going to enlist their subgrantees, which can be a private company, an ISP, public organization like a school district, or local governments. They have to provide connectivity exceeding 100 meg down to 20 meg up, and they have to match 25% of whatever they get. And this is 25% can be, that 25% can be funding that they get from some other source, government source. And also they're going to need to offer a low-cost plan. So this was my example where they're using both sides of the supply and demand market. They're offering them a subsidy to build infrastructure, but only if they induce consumers through a low-cost plan to adopt broadband. So a lot is going on. A lot of data is going to be coming in. We'll want to look at consumers' responses, the participation in the program, especially non-adopters. After all, the real success of a program like this is to get somebody who didn't have connectivity now to be connected, but also how costly that's going to be in terms of taxpayer dollars. And the provider's response is going to be as well, that will they participate in the program? And it's no surprise that participation can be quite low. Consumer participation in FCC's Lifeline program is less than 20% of eligible consumers. So part of that can be as a result of just poor communication to providers and consumers about the program. Again, what's the cost? What's the subsidy cost of that additional activity that providers have deployed? And then the idea of comparing different programs. And this could be across countries, could be across states here in the US, looking for all of those aspects that could make for a successful program. How sensitive is the success of the program to the size of the subsidy? We saw the subsidy go from $9.25 to $50 to $30 in the US. And that had a material effect on the participation and rate that we see. How is speed and latency benchmarks? How do they affect participation in these programs? I already mentioned that outreach might be important and easy onboarding of customers as well. So there's a great deal of evidence.
Professor Glenn, excuse me, you can use your last 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm done. I just have a thank you slide left, and I just want to make the pitch that there's an enormous amount of very valuable information that hopefully somebody is gathering. And many of us would love to analyze it to try to design the better, if not the best, policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Glenn Morris. It's very interesting. The word is policy laboratory. I think I like that sentence very much. Giving a bold insight that the policies should always be developed. Many of us joining this session, I believe we don't have much experiencing of a digital divide problem or connectivity issue because we're living in big cities. But recently I visited Raja Ampat. I cannot start the boat because I'm in progress of a very important meeting with Kominfo, and I know that the destination, there is no signal. So the gap is even bigger in the rural area. And very interesting also that even US as a developed and leading countries has also subsidized programs for this connectivity issue. Thank you very much, Professor Glenn, for sharing. Very, very thoughtful. And our last session, I invite Bapak J. Scott Marcus, Senior Fellow from Brazil. Pak Marcus, the time and screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Very good. And so let me bring up my slides. Oop, 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 oop. They're there, they're there. Good. So let me begin by saying salam alaikum. Thank you very much to Dr. Rizal Akbar and Professor Suhono for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. And by the way, it is morning, it's 4:30 here in Bonn. So I'll be talking a bit about the importance of ubiquitous broadband, gaps in deployment, adoption, and usage, as Professor Warwick has just abundantly dealt with in his very thoughtful talk, how to mitigate those gaps, things that have been attempted around the world, and providing a few concluding thoughts for you. So that's where I look to go for today. Now, as far as the importance, every talk that we've heard this morning, today, has focused on this importance. There's a huge literature on it. Study after study found substantial gains in GDP and GDP per capita as a result of broadband deployment. And of course, broadband deployment has been recognized in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So I think there's no question that broadband is needed. As Professor Warwick said, it's the foundation of pretty much everything else. It's the basis on which the digitalization of society is built. And as Professor Suhono just told us a few minutes ago, it's a fundamental enabler, a fundamental catalyst to the modernization and digitalization of society. Now, many different benefits, economic development, government services, education, healthcare, you name it. There's just a lot that flows from the build out and take up of broadband. We saw that during the pandemic. Work from home played a very important role for knowledge workers worldwide, clearly different in some societies than in others. But the internet as an enabler of work from home, as an enabler of conferencing, as an enabler for workshops like the one that we're conducting at this moment, played a huge role. This is data that my team developed from SimilarWeb, showing for Apple users the spike in the use of Zoom at the point when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So again, the benefits worldwide are quite substantial as an enabler then to pandemic response at many different levels. What we also know from the crisis that we see from the unprovoked aggression in Ukraine, internet is also important as a source of communication, as a source of news, independent news. And we shouldn't underrate that. Now, internet, like many things, has a good side and a bad side. It's not all good, but there's a lot of good that can come from internet being ubiquitously available. When we talk about gaps, again, I would endorse what Professor Warwick was saying. There are different gaps with different implications. I usually focus on three measures of internet take-up. The first being coverage, whether it's available everywhere. The second being adoption, whether people actually take it up, subscribe to it. And the third being what they do with it, how they handle it after they have it. So with that said, here you have OECD data, and this is a chart country by country among OECD members of take-up of the fixed network. And even among OECD countries, which are among the most developed in the world, you see that there are substantial gaps in deployment of the fixed network as you get to the lower end. But what we also know is that in many parts of the world, the fixed network doesn't reach the full national territory and won't for a long time. Much of the literature on this has been written for the cities of the world, the developed countries, countries that already had a fully deployed copper telephony network at the dawn of the broadband age. The problems elsewhere in the world can be different, and in parts of the national territory, in many parts of the world, the mobile network is the network. So a balanced approach to fixed and mobile that recognizes this is important. This is ITU statistics, so it takes in a much wider range of countries. This is coverage. And as you can see, the coverage in developed countries is near universal, but when you look at less developed countries, and also particularly when you look at landlocked countries that are not at the top of the GDP per capita list, coverage tends to be much less. It's getting better over time, but it's less. And we know the reasons for this. I've done work, by the way, in Southern Africa. I've done work in Peru. Getting work to the big cities in Peru on the coast is easy. Getting it into the Andes and into the jungles beyond in the interior is hard. And this is a problem that I think is well known to you in Indonesia. I think that's what we heard in the rural coverage discussion. Highlands and islands are always a problem. Indonesia has both. And here you see also that when we look at adoption, at subscriptions per 100 inhabitants, that can look a lot different from the coverage. But of course, it can't be greater than the coverage. So getting coverage to everybody, getting everybody onto the net is important, needs to be a goal for everyone in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, when we look to mitigate the gaps, it's important to note once again, the countries are different. They don't all have the same problems. They don't all have the same issues. They differ greatly in terms of wealth. Think of GDP per capita. Think of disposable income. That looks a lot different in some countries than it does in places like New York and Paris. The degree of digital competence on the part of the public, their ability to use the services once they have them. As Professor Warwick said, affordability is a key issue, but digital skills is another very crucial issue. So the existing coverage of fixed networks, mobile networks, and in some countries, cable networks, plays a key role in what can be done and what's achievable. Even the physical characteristics, things like the length of copper subloops, can play a big role in what's achievable and what's not. But one of the biggest factors, of course, is physical topography, highlands, islands, again, access to submarine cables, these all play a role. And once again, important to recognize adoption, deployment, use, they're different things, and the tools to deal with them are also different. So a one-size-fits-all solution is not appropriate. Now, with a lot of these, money plays a key role. One of my friends likes to say, the answer is money, what's the question? So there we go. And that does play a role. It's really a ubiquitous theme. Now, on the regulatory side, a lot of work has been done. I would particularly call your attention to a set of OECD recommendations on broadband. They were first issued in 2004. They were updated for the first time in 2021. I had the honor of writing one of the preparatory studies for that work. I think you will also find the study helpful. But clearly there are different tools, and a lot of these are well understood from experience worldwide. Promotion of competition through regulatory tools is one. Addressing resource constraints, especially things like spectrum allocation and assignment. Access to land and rights of way, clearly a key issue. We heard some discussion in the earlier presentations about the need for towers. This is part of the same issue. The simplification of permitting and licensing procedures. A lot of cases, the deployment in principle could be funded. It's just hard to get it out because the permitting process is so time consuming and because it's delegated to such low levels within government. Public subsidy can be a key answer, but it needs to be done with care so as not to crowd out private investment. I'll be spending a few more minutes on that. The promotion of network reliability and resilience is important. It's not just a matter of ensuring that the connectivity is there, it's also a matter of ensuring that it stays there. And of course, many countries are prone to natural disasters, some unfortunately also to man-made disasters. Indonesia knows about natural disasters. So again, planning for resilience has to be part of the process, and also do attention to things like consumer protection and periodic assessment of the state of the market. I'll talk about that more in a moment. Now, in terms of increasing funds available, foreign direct investment can play a role. Many countries are less open to this than they probably should be, but total openness also isn't possible in a world with increasing geopolitical tensions. because of the risk of security associated with crucial telecommunication resources. Co-investment can be a good answer in some countries. Co-investment can take place among multiple network operators, can take place in the form of sharing infrastructure, mobile towers, I think, being a good example. But also there are interesting examples worldwide of infrastructure sharing between network operators and other firms. For example, electric utilities. We see a very good example of this in Ireland, for instance. But then direct public financing, where it makes sense, where it's feasible. And this is something, again, some of the developed countries have been resistant to this, but it has its place. Now, once again, very important to ensure that public funding doesn't crowd out private investment. One of the things that my team is looking at as part of our T20 work is the repurposing of a portion of new tax revenues that can be expected through the OECD G20 revision of corporate taxation. That's expected to increase tax revenues worldwide by about 150 billion per year US, and also to redistribute 120 billion. That's a big chunk of change. We're trying to assess exactly where it goes. There are some OECD estimates on this. Given that the companies that will be paying in are largely digital online firms, especially US-based firms that benefit from broadband worldwide, there's a certain social justice in saying that countries that wish to retarget or repurpose some of those revenues, they could be spent for anything, but some of the countries that wish to repurpose for expansion of their broadband infrastructure, this is a source that probably isn't in current budgets because nobody was expecting it. Debt financing, clearly a means of stretching the dollars, bringing them forward. Institutional international lenders are one source. Within Europe, we have something called the Resource and Resilience Loan Facility that would be a good source of debt financing. Basically, interest rates are low. If you're going to do it, this is a good time to do it. Now, a clear point is that participation in the digital society isn't optional today. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for everybody. It requires intervention not just on supply side, but exactly as Professor Warwick said, also on the demand side. So direct subsidies in terms of supporting the cost of broadband for the poor, for the disadvantaged, clearly has a role to play. Demand aggregation can play a role, but a big deal, I think, is also education and training. And this is a need for digital skills. It's a need that's perhaps given a sharper point due to the need to work from home under the pandemic, so that shift to remote work. But also it was a long-term issue anyway, due to the progressive replacement of certain jobs, repetitive mid-level skill jobs mostly, not low skill, by automation, by digitalization, by artificial intelligence. So the need to shift to lifelong learning is a major theme. Policymaking, good policymaking clearly has a role to play. Explicit identification of broadband goals, comprehensive statistics and mapping, creation and implementation of a broadband plan. You heard Professor Warwick speak about this. And also independence of the regulatory agency from politics and lobbying. This is important. That's important for the regulatory agency, not for the ministry. The ministry's job is inherently political. So one needs to make a distinction here. And I would actually like to hearken back to your Minister for Maritime Affairs, who talked about the need to align mission, vision, and strategy. And clearly you've done a lot of that. I liked what I heard from Bhakti, but it's an area that I think all countries need to pay attention to. So concluding, connectivity for all has become even more important than in recent past. Governments in developed and developing countries need to be paying attention to both deployment and adoption. You need balanced strategies. Different countries face different challenges and therefore will need different targeted, tailored solutions. A balance is needed between supply side measures with innovative funding and adoption and use, which requires different measures, mostly demand side measures, and especially an increased focus on lifelong education and learning. And with that, many thanks. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to have met with you this morning.
Thank you very much, Pak Scott Marcus from Bruegel. Very thoughtful sharing. Many interesting thoughts. The most I like is the answer is money. What is the question? So whatever the question, the answer is always money. So investment of the connectivity with the source of fund that properly managed by both government and companies will be very supporting to support the connectivity issue, which is during the pandemic is very become very vital to our life. We cannot learn, we cannot study for our children, we cannot work during the peak of the pandemic without connectivity. So with that good connectivity, we can survive this pandemic. We have get all of the distinguished speakers. So with this, I invite distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question, you can write the chat, or you can also raise your hand during using the reaction, and then our administrator will give the chance for you to ask for the question. I think we can have a question here from what is the solution gap? What is the solution gap between internet in the city and rural? So I think Prof. Waras first, can you respond to this question? The question is about how do you see the gap? What was the main difference for the solution of the broadband connection in city and rural? Is there, based on your experience, there is a significant difference, or is it just simply the same?
I think you need to unmute him.
Oh, should I repeat?
You have to unmute him. I don't think he can unmute himself.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Pak Marcus. Yeah, Professor Glenn, you haven't unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. So the gap between rural and urban generally comes down to density, and the long loop lengths and trunk lengths that are necessary and costly for rural areas in which are more sparsely populated. Now, this can be complicated by what Dr. Marcus had said about the islands and the highlands. Mostly the highlands, the rougher terrain in the rural areas may also contribute to higher costs, and therefore less deployment, greater lack of connectivity. In the U.S., and I can't speak for Indonesia, but in the U.S., it's also the case that incomes are lower in rural areas as a general rule than urban areas, and so it's a third reason why there's less connectivity is it's less affordable relative to personal income.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Glenn Waras. I believe Pak Marcus has any other opinion regarding this question. Please,
well, I completely agree with what Professor Warwick said, but let me also add, for Indonesia, clearly since you're an archipelago, a collection of islands, getting connectivity to the different islands clearly has been an issue. I'm sure that that's what we heard when we heard about the need to build a fiber backbone through the islands. And what we also heard is that a lot of connections have to be done with microwave radio. So again, you face some special challenges that some countries don't.
Yes, okay, thank you, Pak Marcus. As we know that Indonesia has 70,000 islands, so the chance that you loss of signal is very big in these islands. Even though we have almost 300,000 towers of GSM, but still we have many blank spots, and it's the challenge. And when Bhakti, as Pak Denny mentioned during the session, Pak Dani mentioned during his presentation, is trying to close the gap in a very persistent and consistent initiative. I see someone raising hand here. Yeah. Can administrator help me on? Sorry. Who is raising hand? Apakah dia? Silakan, Mbak Dia.
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
All right. First of all, I want to say thank you. And maybe this discussions is for Professor Glenn Warrow. That is discuss connectivity gap and broadband distributions. I discussed that in Indonesia, as you know, that due geographical conditions, there is a village that behind the mountain, so it's hard to visit, right? And according my experience last week when I visit to several districts, there is no internet provider service that want to give or provide the infrastructure of the internet to village, because the geographical conditions of Indonesia that is hard to visit. So West Java government have a program called Digital Village that is subsidized and provide internet infrastructure that's called Power, that can spread the internet to the rural areas near of the main tower. So actually this program will be stimulus to encourage the internet services provider to provide internet in the village in the end of the day. And then my question is the rural people self. So in Indonesia, the rural people is different from the city people. Their lack of skills for using internet and their lack of internet literacy and so on. For example, last year when West Java government give the computer or the laptop as to member village on business. But you know what? There is still people who cannot turn on the computer. So yeah, that's the reality of the rural people. So the question is, what is the further concept that you think will be right for Indonesians after providing the infrastructure of internet? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comment and question. I think you nailed exactly the difficulty of the supply side, the difficulty in deployment due to the remoteness and the mountainousness of some of those rural villages. That on the demand side, though, I think you also hit it, which is something Dr. Marcus had made the point right at the end of his presentation, is that digital literacy is absolutely critical. I am not an expert in this. I think there's actually one of our 9 policy areas will be looking into this, but I think there are some innovations on that side. I've heard of programs which use navigators, which are people who are peers to sit down and with the person who just got their new tablet or their laptop, show them where the on button is, turn it on, and then walk them through the process. Frankly, I find it a much easier way to learn a program or a new piece of hardware. I still haven't figured out how to use my Samsung watch. I need somebody to navigate me through that. I do think that in some sense it's again a matter of money, because you're going to need to deploy people out to those remote areas if you are unable to recruit them locally. If I might, I'll kick this over to Scott, see if he had some follow-up.
Well, if I may, I think what Professor Warwick said, I absolutely agree with. Clearly, the educational process in the schools has to be part of this. Now, that takes a while to actually work its way up through the age cohorts in the population. But what we already heard a few minutes ago is that not all of your schools are connected. So ensuring that the schools have the facilities they need to be able to demonstrate and teach this is clearly an area that that you are working on, but also warrants continued attention.
Okay, thank you, Professor Warwick and Pak Marcus. Hopefully it answered the question. And can we go to the following question? It's come from Mbak Vika from National ICT Council regarding which one should be the priority, bridging the gap of connectivity or developing the digital skill gap. If Pak Dani January Ismawan from Bakti is still with us, I believe this question is also suitable because Bakti is main activity is related with the aksesibilitas telekomunikasi dan informasi. Pak Dani, apakah masih bersama kita? If Pak Dani is still with us,
okay,
you are invited to respond to the question.
Yes, we all agree here that the first priority is how to deliver the equitable infrastructure first, because this is the basis, yes. And the other things, we also have the biggest challenge, how to empower the digital ecosystem after the infrastructure already have. And as our experience, the biggest challenge is the digital iteration and also the digital adoption. So what we have done for this condition, especially in the rural area, we give the example of the useful for the digital initiatives that may be solving their problem, because it make the digital adoption what can implement more easily for these people in the rural area. That's it, Pak Rizal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dani. Very helpful. Maybe Professor Warwick can share your thoughts regarding this issue in U.S. experience.
Again, I think it's the priority is getting connectivity, and as Scott had mentioned, getting connectivity to the schools is absolutely critical. In fact, that was really one of the first of the two programs that were stood up by the FCC using universal service funds, was to connect the schools and libraries. So.
Okay, thank you, Professor. And maybe Pak Scott have any thoughts regarding the European situation?
Sorry, I'll just add a few words to that. Yes, this notion of schools and libraries, if you go back to the ITU literature going back 10 years and more, you'll see that much of it makes a distinction between universal access versus universal service. Universal access means indeed getting connectivity to schools, libraries, similar institutions. You also see a bit of that actually in European policy today, with a focus on getting it to what they sometimes call drivers. So this is important, but you know, I would agree with the comments that the connectivity has to be there, because you can't get more usage than what you have connectivity for. But at the same time, once you've established that foundation, you really have to work both sides of the problem. You need balanced approach to supply and demand. I like to say that trying to deal with it solely on the supply side is like pushing on a rope. You've got to be able to pull too.
Okay, thank you, Pak Scott. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are reaching our time to stop the webinars. Thank you very much for the distinguished speakers, Pak Dani, Pak Firman, Professor Glenn Warros, and Pak Scott. There are many insightful statements during these webinars, but mainly we are understanding that during the digital transformation that impacting all of the our human life, many advancements should only be done under the connectivity that is provided in a minimum requirement that is suitable for delivering the broadband connectivity. So with that, many issues related with how we develop the application, how we develop the human and digital capability skills could be developed. So bridging the gap, bridging the digital divide, meaning we first bridging the connectivity, and then after that we do many things on top of this connectivity. And this is not a responsibility of just one or entity, is responsibility of all of us, from the government, the companies, and all citizens to join. Participation is not optional. Participation is now obligatory. With that, I conclude the session. Thank you very much. And the last session is, I believe we have the opportunity to have a photo session. Yeah, Mbak Riza. Please, all of the audience, would you mind to open your video? Then admin could take the picture of us. Mbak Widya Mbak Riza, sorry, bisa saya dibantu untuk sesi fotonya?
Oke, sudah on cam semua. Kita mulai sesi fotonya. 1, 2, 3.
Give your best smile. Oke.
Oke, next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, it's enough.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Riza. Professor Suhono, if you want to have a closing remark, please. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Professor. And then with that, we close the session. Thank you very much again, Prof. Glenn Warros, Professor Markus, Pak Firman, Pak Dani, and all the attendees who joining us. Many insightful thoughts, and I will check whether the material could be shared. I will check through the ITB. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, I close the session. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bye.
Permission to leave. Thank you.